And the way that it is so efficient, we can go in and take water, and we can typically do it, we can clean it up for anywhere from 25 to 50%, sometimes more, cheaper than our rivals, do a better job, and still make more money. And even at that point, we're still looking at a 40 to 50% profit margin. So we can get out there and make the money. We've just got to get the contracts in place, and we have to have the ability to do it. So I'm really happy to be here today because I'm really interested in some of the thoughts that the panel might have, because just as what one of you was talking about earlier, you have people who come in and they've got great ideas, they've got great technology, they've put together a good team, and they've got it all moving forward, but they don't have the juice to get to that next level, or they're trying to get to that next level to get that contract in place so they can then move forward and become a viable company. So anyway, that's my presentation. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the presentation, Greg. I like your slides. A lot of color. Say, if someone dropped all the money you need in a bag right on the cabinet there, kind of take me through the steps you'd take, the time it would take to become what you feel would be profitable.
First, you chase me out the door. So. Okay. So, well, what steps would we take? The first steps we would take would be to marshal some of the materials that we have, the machines and so forth. They are basically ready, needing about maybe another 20% to be finalized so they can get out in the field. I want to have machines that are ready to pull up and get to work right now. And so to do that, we would have to put together an entire process line or train or whatever you want to call it, a production line of those machines and have them ready to go. So that when we go in and talk to a company, instead of saying, yeah, we can be there in 30 days or 45 days or something along those lines, we can say we can be there tomorrow. We can be there next week. Because so many of the production companies, they look at people providing services such as what we're doing. They look at that as just a service that they expect to show up at their door and start processing, and that's it. Now, some of them have an understanding that we need to have a little more time because it's a new technology. So we've talked to Chevron about doing a pilot project with them, and they've assigned an engineer to us. We're beginning to do that work. But in order to get us really jump-started, I would have us take that money, build an entire lineup so that we're ready to go out in the field. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the field and talked to production guys who said, you know what, if you had that pretty machine that I see in that picture right there, here on the back of your trailer, I'd put you to work right now. And so the need is there, and we could actually do that. We could literally do that. We could literally show up on site, hook everything up, because everything is plug and play. Everything we do is plug and play. It's all cam locks and so forth, boom, boom, boom. We fit it together. We could show up on site, and in 3 or 4 hours, we could be producing and processing water, just that fast. And I'm talking at the rate of about 300 gallons a minute, 8 to 10,000 barrels a day. That's with one lineup of our machines. So that's, I think, would be one of the best ways. The other thing is that on these folks who are the warriors, the part-time warriors, there are several of them who are, I think, very crucial to what we're doing, who, if we had the money, they would be able to come on with a salary and start working full-time immediately. And that would really energize us as well. And I think that would help to really focus what we're doing and get us going in the right direction.
Do you have a feel for the amount of funds you would need to get started and how long it would take to go from there to generate revenue?
I think that in order to build the full lineup and do some of the things that I'm talking about, we're looking at probably somewhere in the range of $4 to $6 million.
How much?
$4 to $6 million, and that would build out the entire part that I'm talking about. It would allow us to hire some of these people and have them be full-time so that we're working. We have some fantastic people working with us, some people who have a lot of oil field experience. But until we can offer them the ability to have income, they can't be full-time. And so they can't put full-time effort or work into us. But that would allow us to do that.
Thanks, Judy. Ken?
First, great presentation. I just had a couple questions. So the way that everything is set up, is it one of two things? Either you go out to a place and then do you do it as a service per barrel or per capita, but you keep the machine, or do you lease the machine, or does the oil company own the machine at that point, or would you be willing to sell the machine with like a consulting fee or an engineering fee? How is that set up, or how are you envisioning that being run? Like how's that revenue generated?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because particularly in the oil field with the production companies, they don't want to own the machines. They don't want to be in charge of it. All they want to do is produce oil and sell it. So they're not interested in becoming water guys. And so it's a great question, because really what we want to do is we provide a service. And the service is to give a per barrel cost to them that is affordable to them and gives them what they want in terms of the profile of the water, so they can reuse it as opposed to disposing of it. And I sat down one time with Parsley Energy and sat down and showed them how they could have literally a closed loop where they don't buy any water and they don't sell any water, or they don't have to dispose of any water. And it all stays within that loop, and they continue to use it over and over and over again. Now, there's no perfection to that. I mean, it's things have to balance out and so on and so forth. But back to what you were saying, another part of that is we have chosen to protect our intellectual property by using trade secret, rather than going the route of patent, because there have been a lot of changes in patent law. The little guy is really at a disadvantage these days. So what we decided to do was stay with trade secret. It's perpetual, it lasts forever. It's recognized by almost every country and every state. So in doing that, though, we have to be very careful about selling them. And yes, we can have agreements and so forth about that, but typically we're going to show up, process it, we're going to handle it, we'll provide a service. In some instances, we would lease the machines. We could lease the machines, and we could provide backup and support and so on and so forth, backup support, training, and things of that nature, and have a continuing obligation.
So you couldn't, so you wouldn't like lease something like this permanently at a low, because we represent a lot of, Zing represents a lot of facilities, specifically like things, not specifically oil and gas, but things like, so my question to you would be, would you put that permanently on site somewhere, and is that part of your kind of your operating strategy to do that at all, or
yes.
It's pack it, move it, is that?
Yeah,
First,
let me say nothing is an absolute cookie cutter in business. I mean, you have to be creative and thoughtful about whatever you're going to do. In the oil and gas area, in the oil and gas space, we're not going to sell the machines. We're either going to be out processing it ourselves and handling it ourselves, or potentially leasing it. But most likely we'll be providing a service. In other areas, we'll probably be doing nothing but leasing, and probably long-term leases and things of that nature. And in certain areas, I am open to the idea, and so are our team, that we would actually sell them, and we'd have protections built in with respect to, not getting knockoffs and so on, and making sure that our IP is protected. So, but no, it's not out of the question. It's just not our general model.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, really interesting product. I grew up in the oil and gas space in Oklahoma. So I'm a software developer now, and it's all tech and code, but I know a lot about this. So is the idea here to replace the saltwater disposal well?
Yes, in short.
Okay, so...
And it's also, if I may, it's also to replace, eventually, utilizing very dirty water to do very large fracs that they typically refer to as slick fracs. Because you're using water that still has bacteria in it typically, you're putting that back down into your reservoir, and when that happens, over a period of time, you start to see the growth of hydrogen sulfide gas. And that's because when bacteria is eating, it makes gas. And so when it makes that gas is at high pressure and it's typically dissolved into the water. It's extremely difficult to get out. It smells terrible, and it's very dangerous. It can actually kill people. I know people who got exposed to it, one in North Dakota, another one in Alberta, who were exposed to it and they had to go to the hospital for 4 or 5 weeks, and their lungs were permanently damaged. So hydrogen sulfide gas is dangerous, and it can get, as it grows, and it can actually foul your reserves over a period of time. And we're starting to see in West Texas now, we've heard more and more people contacting us and saying, well, we have a problem with hydrogen sulfide gas. It wasn't there before. So it's really both. It's make it clean, and then also get rid of the disposal sites as much as possible. May not be able to do it completely, but as much as possible.
Okay. So then, if you had a pilot project, a pilot agreement at a major frac site, the goal would be to prove that the economics of your product was superior to the saltwater disposal well model, right?
Correct.
Okay, what's stopping you guys from getting that pilot frac site going?
Well, I think we might be very close to getting that going. Chevron has indicated interest in doing a pilot with us. I've talked with Oxy as well. They have a pilot program, and I'm hopeful that we might get something going with them. But here's the problem with, to be quite frank, here's the problem with large production companies like that. They'll say, yes, we want to do this with you. And we actually did a whole process with Hunt Oil, for example. Maybe that's a good example. We went with Hunt Oil, did a long process with them. We actually also working with the Hunt Institute at SMU to help them, because they have a mission about helping.
This is like Lomar Hunt and that Hunt, right?
It's actually Hunter Hunt and his wife actually funded that. Hunter Hunt's the CEO of Hunt Oil.
But it's the Hunt family that
It's
we
a
all
Hunt
know.
family.
Okay.
Right. Anyway, but so we had this whole thing going all together, and they had us come out, and they were doing an EOR project, which for people who don't know, that's an enhanced oil recovery project where they're trying to get more oil out after they've done the fracking, basically. And they've done some really extraordinary things. Hunt Oil is an extraordinary company. But we got to the point where we had worked with them for 8 months and ready to go on this pilot, but then they decided they figured out a way, because they were doing what's called a carbon dioxide flood, and they figured out a way to do a whole lot more carbon dioxide and a whole lot less water. So instead of needing 20 or 30,000 barrels a day, they only needed 800. So they just said, well, we really don't need you, sorry. So that's the problem that occurs when you're dealing with large companies like that. And for a small company like us, we have to be very careful. We can't put all our eggs in one basket. And one thing I say as an entrepreneur that I do, I always have multiple pathways for everything. We don't just have one company that can build our machines. Nelson and I have worked to source, and we've got basically 3 or 4 different companies that can build these machines at different levels and at different speeds and so on and so forth. If any one of them fails us, we go to the next one. Same thing with trying to get financing lined up. Never work with just one bank or one finance source or whatever. So same thing here. We're not ever going to put all our eggs in one basket. But for a small company, that's difficult, because once you get focused on something and you're working on it and you have limited resources, it's very difficult not to get trapped into that one path. And then if that path ends after 8 or 9 months, then what do you do? So that's part of the problem. And why it hasn't happened before this is that we're just in the process now of being able to launch out, and we've got machines available now. We used to go around and talk to people, and I'd say, well, we can build some machines in about 120 days if we can get the financing. That doesn't get contracts, They're not interested in that.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out how your first pilot goes. It would seem to me that a really good story about how your product increased, well, it does a lot of things. It reduces water consumption, it increases production, and then costs less to operate the well based on eliminating the saltwater disposal costs. There's a really great story there if you can just make it real. So, I look forward to finding out more about how you progress soon.
Well, I'll keep you informed. And we're also looking at other areas too. So we're looking at governmental contracts right now. We have two very wonderful ladies who are working with us on governmental contracts. They're very skilled in it. One of the ones that we're most interested in is something I've always thought of with this machine, with the molecular organic rejection machine, is take one of our machines and just place it on a barge. And where there's an oil spill, we just go off into the water and get large skimmers and pull it all in, and we'll have oil going out one side and ocean water going out the other.
Oh yeah, that was one more question. So your process of purifying, does it actually separate and then they can collect new product that they're not collecting before as well? So when you're like purifying the water,
Right.
is one of the byproducts more oil and gas product to take to market?
Oh, yes, that's a great point. All right, I mean, you've heard of skim operations, right?
Yeah.
Well, in essence, we're an incredibly efficient skim operation. So they can get rid of any other skim operations they have, and skim operations, for those who don't know, are when you take water that has oil in it, and it might have 1, 2, 3% of hydrocarbons in it, and they find a way to skim out those hydrocarbons, collect them, and sell them. And that's one of the ways that the disposal units actually made a lot of their money. And it was that they skim that water and then they take the oil and they go sell it. That was a big part of it. So, but in our case, yes, we can separate that out and then go sell that oil. So if we're cleaning up an oil spill, for example, the oil to hydrocarbons, once it gets up to a point where it's 80 to 90% hydrocarbons, we just take it to the refinery and sell it.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot. Great. Best of luck to you guys and your team.
Thank you.
Do you have competitors now?
There are, at last count, I checked with CLEAR, C-L-E-A-R, which is a consortium of private companies and the University of Texas Arlington, and it's headed by a fellow by the name of Zach Hildenbrand. And they have looked at companies, and there are approximately 300 to 400 companies that are out there claiming to do various kinds of water. What's interesting about that is Zach Hildenbrand recently wrote an article where he confirmed this to me in person. He said, of all those companies in that group, I can tell you right off the bat, 75% of them cannot recycle the water. They say they can, but they can't. 75%. And of the 25% remaining, most of them are relatively inefficient, or they have a very high cost. So anybody can take that water and clean it up really, really good if you want to spend, $3, $5, $6 a barrel. But the oil companies don't want to do that. So the answer to your question is, right now in this space, there are no companies that have our specific combination of technologies.
Are oil companies currently using your competitors?
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
they're happy or not happy, or?
Well, right now they're relatively happy. To give you an example, we were competing for a contract in North Dakota with a company, and the company that won the contract basically had two screens, a 50 micron and a 100 micron screen, and that was it. That's basically all they were doing. And then they were hitting the water with chlorine dioxide to try to kill whatever was in it, which again is another dangerous element. They actually banned it in Alberta. But they were using that to then put it down the hole, and away they go. The reason we did not get that contract was because we could not be on site at that time. We could not be on site within 30 to 45 days ready to go. They could. Now, that's not true now. Today, we can be on site. But we lost that contract, or didn't get that contract, for that one reason. But what's happening is they're taking large amounts of water, and they're utilizing them in fracking and what are called slick fracks, and they're utilizing water that is not very clean. And in the long run, it's going to be a negative. Yes.
Been out trying to find that?
Well, that's what our sales team is out there going to be pounding the pavement, so to speak, to do. The difficulty is we get a contract, we still have to marshal and finalize or finish up those machines, because they have to be designed for whatever their actual end use is, because it can vary from place to place. So we have to do that, and then we have to have people who can pick all those things up and haul them out and set them up and do all those things. So bottom line is we need money to do that.
So how much money do you think you need to get one unit out and going and operating and do a proof of concept?
With what we've got right now, and that was really sort of the purpose of giving you the one proposal that I gave you that was for a company in Fort Worth. And that gives you a pretty good example of what it is. And we actually have all the numbers put together on that. And the answer to your question is, it would probably be right on the order of about, initially, between $400,000 and $500,000 up front. And then, which some companies will do in these contracts, so they sometimes will give you an upfront of 5 to 10%. But you have to be able to perform. So to get out in the field and really get working, it's probably going to be somewhere in the range right now of about 600 to 800,000, something like that.
And what equity are you looking to give for somebody who comes in and puts in your $4 to $6 million?
Right, and what we're trying to do is utilize a process of doing a purchase and leaseback option where somebody could come in and actually buy equipment rather than buy securities. So they come in, they'd buy equipment, and they would own that equipment, and they would lease it back to us, and the lease would have a very nice sweetener on it. It would have a very nice interest rate. And in addition to that, that machine, when it's put into operation in a contract setting, would then also get a percentage of the income from the water that it processes. So the person who's buying the machine actually gets sort of a double payday, if you will. They get the lease, but they also get this other payday. And so when the lease is bought out, they then have first right of refusal to do the next one again. So in essence, become our leasing company, if you will. So they would do that over and over and over again if they chose to. And they would have the UCC1 on the machines. They would own the machines. A lot better than owning a piece of paper, I think.
Cap that over the life of the machine, or until you recoup 5x your investment back, or is that over the life of the machine? Like if I wanted to name it Jenny, like I'm Forrest Gump, and I wanted to name the machine Jenny, and how's the Jenny doing?
We could do that.
Okay.
We could start naming the
All right,
machines
well,
after people. I like that idea.
Yeah. So therefore, I mean, would that be mine kind of in perpetuity, and then like we kind of be partners together? Is that the setup? What you're asking? Or
I think that is a good setup. Doesn't have to be the only one.
Okay.
Because some people, when they buy a machine and they have a lease, they want to get out of it at some point. They want to be done with that. Other people might say, no, I want to keep doing this. I enjoy doing this. I want to do this. I'm making money at it. So the answer is yes, that's a possibility that could be worked out that way, yes.
Can I ask one more question? Are you, have you considered like because you have a lot of like metal finishing, and a lot of these people are retiring from the industry because it's a late 20th century industry. Do you have any? Have you ever thought of like creating like a franchise model? So for like if I'm going to do a franchise, I'm going to call people that I know and try to get them to, hey, what are you doing with your solution, right? What are you total dissolved solids? How can I help, right? So if I have I could send the Jenny here for 60 days, and then send it somewhere else for 2 months. And would that be something that you'd be amenable to?
Yeah,
like a
absolutely.
franchise model of it'd be Ken's water recycling, but it'd really be using your machines.
No, that's a very interesting thought, and I think it's a very viable possibility. I think it would potentially work well.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more final question. The project that you almost got, that you mentioned, they went to a carbon dioxide alternative, right, instead of water.
Well, no, they were actually trying to fit us into a project where they were using that method of EOR, and they were able to make their process much more efficient, so they didn't need the water that we would have been cleaning
Right.
up for them.
So my question is that alternative way of doing it a potential threat in that it removes the need for the way the water is used now that makes this so necessary? Is that a potential competitive threat?
No, and the reason is because that was an EOR project, an enhanced oil recovery project. It was after the fracking, and they were utilizing these things to
Late life cycle.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And they were being very, very successful at it. Hunt's a great company, and they were doing a great job. It was impressive to watch them. But I don't see that as people have tried to use carbon dioxide in the fracking process, and I've heard goods and bads about it. But one thing I do know is that the companies are not going to it. There's not a rush to go to carbon dioxide at this point. And I don't know all the reasons why, but I think part of it's because it's just not as efficient, and it just doesn't work as well. So unless they find something better or more efficient, I think, we're going to continue to see more and more fracking. It's becoming more and more efficient. They're
So
getting
you
better
need
at
you
it.
need a mainline, early stage life cycle fracking operation
Yes.
pilot project. Yeah.
Yes.
One last question, then we'll go to advice. If an, whatever you want to call it, owner, investor buys your unit and you all disappear, is there something they can do with can they then compete? Can they then go out and use this machine to do what you were doing so they still have value in their investment?
Yes, if we all disappeared, guys, don't disappear on me, please. But if we all disappeared, that's part of the idea, is that they would still own the machine. It would be theirs. They own it. If we're not living up to our contractual obligations, then they would have a right to go do whatever they wanted to do with it. They could use it for all kinds of different things. And again, emphasizing the list of potential different things that this could be used for is just absolutely amazing. So, for example, in livestock, the processing of livestock. The offshoot of that is that you have basically potable water that's used to clean the livestock once it's been slaughtered and so forth. Then you have a lot of blood, serum, all kinds of amino acids. So we can use our machine to process it. And in processing it, we separate out all of those elements into a barrel. A barrel of that is more valuable than a barrel of crude oil. It's used in cosmetics. It's used in pharmaceuticals. It's used in health foods. It's used in all kinds of things, dog foods. So your dog probably gets some of that. You never know.
I'm not
Delicious.
eating any more health food.
But that's just one example. That's just one example. Another example, basically a $3 billion plus industry is the new ship bilge cleanout industry. Because of new regulations, ships are required they can't just dump their bilges out, and the bilges are typically filled with all kinds of hydrocarbons and bacteria and so forth. So now they have to clean them. So one of our machines would be perfect doing that. We'd be able to go in and do that if I could find, that's one place where we talk about franchising. Another word I use for it is licensing. We can license for people to go, here, you use it to do this. And then they can go and do that. Go ports like in the Far East and so forth. But there are many, many, many different potential uses for this. The paper and pulp industry, we've had a lot of different contacts there. But we're trying also to stay focused, because it's so easy to get unfocused with so many different possibilities out there. And so that's how we're staying focused on just a few pathways to try to get those first contracts.
We'll go to the advice phase. So now you need to put the lock on your mouth. We're going to start with John. When the panelists have given their advice, we'll go to the audience. When it's your turn, Ted, you getting a big laugh back there? When it's your turn, be sure you have a microphone, face that camera, and make sure the microphone's up to your mouth, please. John.
Gene, I think it would be great if you could get a university involved that would give you instant credibility and probably some expertise, and maybe work a thing where they could get a % of the business you get, so they could use it for scholarships. But I think it'd be instant credibility. They probably have contacts in the industry. That would be a slam dunk, the way to get started. The second thing, I think you set up one location in Dallas or someplace easy, and send a note out to all your potential customers and investors and say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, and we're going to set up a demo on this date from these times where we're going to show you what we do and purify, separate the water, and let them come and see you, and while they're there, try to snag contracts. And the next thing, if they have a manufacturing rep like they do in the manufacturing business that has customers that could use your product, work a deal with them to get you contracts. Once you got a contract, you could probably get it factored, and that would be your cash. And that's my thoughts. Ken?
Okay. Since I can't ask any more questions, I'm going to make an assumption. I am assuming that you guys are going to the Oil and Gas Expo in Houston in June, and then there's the Oklahoma one in October. So I'm going to assume you're going to go to the one on June 11th and 12th, and I would take any initial cash and I would try to not make a splash, but I would try to really focus on that, because there's going to be a lot of, if I'm going to an expo, it's going to be, how do I solve my problem? So if I'm going to go there, then okay, so let's there's a water guy here, there's a water guy there, so and I would really focus on demos for that. I went to your website, it's super dry. I would do more like animated examples. So if I'm going there, I'm going there for something specific. So I would say I would do more animation. Like these are the technologies we use, and I'm not saying that because I have a marketing company, but these are the technologies we use. This is how we do them. This is what separates us from. This is our secret sauce, so to speak, and this is what separates us from the existing pack. If you're telling me that 25% are crappy, and you guys could be the golden boy, I could be a contender, you could be those guys, then that's how I would start doing that in video. I'd start doing that in social media. I would start doing that to environmental groups and going, why aren't you just saying, just hire these guys and we'll stop protesting you? I mean, that kind of thing. Really create why you're different. I mean, this place, these people, it's a good start. But create and show and tell the story of why you're different. So that's all I have right now.
I think kind of like what Ken has alluded to here, I just think that you need some really good examples of your product being used and a success story. Whatever way you can get it, even if it's just, let us just convert your water for a day. We'll just come out and do it for free. We're going to bring our stuff to your frac site, and we're going to measure how much it would cost to get rid of your water per barrel versus the traditional way that you're already doing it. Anything you can do to get the success story and get it documented.
You did a good presentation. Appreciate that. I'm a bootstrap entrepreneur who says you get the sale first and then you worry about everything else later. So I would encourage you to get the sale. But I'm going to go focus on something else completely, because you really got me excited on how you can clean up oil spills and have the oil to boot. So I remember hearing, and I was trying to Google it and found something else, but I remember hearing that there's a oil off of the African coast ever. In trying to Google it, I came up with the Taylor oil spill that isn't talked about apparently much, and
Not my fault.
It's been it's been going since. This is your fault. This is your oil spill. It's been going since 2004, and it's doing tens of thousands of gallons. They say now 176.4 million gallons of oil into the Gulf. I would just think that you would be able to get government grants from Exxon or whoever this oil spill was, and they would give you the money to build these barges and go out and then sell this oil and fix an environmental disaster that is really overtaking the world with all of this oil going out there. So my excitement is 100% in going out and cleaning up oil spills. If you can do that and sell the oil you're getting, that's fantastic. I do like the way you're structuring in your transaction. That's advice that we end up giving here all the time because it puts an investor in a more secure position. I don't know that there's a resale value for this, but still at least you have something instead of a piece of paper if you go out of business. So congratulations on that. So we're going to go to the audience now for advice. Again, microphone in your mouth. Look at that camera. And by the way, please don't, since many of you work for the company already, don't take this as the opportunity to continue his initial presentation. Advice only.
Advice?
Greg, I came in a little late.
You got moved on?
Okay, I came in a little late, but I'm listening to what, and I'm looking at what you proposed here. Can you take that one step further and make it so that it's recycled water for, like, that can be used like in medical places, in places where there's drought? Can it be actually recycled further?
He can't answer that because this is only advice.
So you're basically giving him advice. He should probably look into.
No, I'm asking you a question. Can it go further?
You can't ask questions. You should go further.
Never mind.
No, that was you gave him advice. You should go further, like he said.
Anyone else?
Look into
Advice?
some medical.
Zach?
Great presentation, by the way, Greg. I want to know what salespeople. What are you paying sales reps? I need to be a sales rep.
I think going after the environmental stuff, just kind of adding what he was saying earlier, would be a great idea, especially with a lot of the younger generation. We're really into that kind of stuff, so I think that would be a fantastic idea. So really, really, I think you should look into that for sure, for sure.
Are we going to have the most quiet audience
Yes.
ever? Well, most of them work for you, so.
All right, I think we're going back to the.
Okay, so
to
you're
the
at
panel.
your 2 minutes.
Oh, you got another one? You got more advice?
Yeah, so how are these, how are these?
That sounds like a question.
Okay, so if I'm delivering these proposals, this, it looks really dry. I would do something
With more color, because we get proposals from companies all the time, drone companies, software development companies, and I would like to see something just with a little more. There's a lot to it, and I want something that can, like an infographic would be great. Any kind of illustration, anything that shows off your technical prowess and your expertise, because this is super dry, and I was trying to read it before, you went through the presentation. I was like, and I started actually getting a little sleepy reading, because I was like, not because it's boring, but it's a lot to read. It's a lot to take in, and so but if I had, you would save this much, and it's a graphic, and that I would remember. So I would change these. The executive summary is way better, so I would make this look more like this, because at some point you're going to have somebody cut a check, and if I'm cutting a check, I want to cut a check for this, not this.
And one more piece of advice from the audience.
One of the things that I was in your presentation that I think would help and make more clear, and I didn't get it until people were asking questions, is the hazardous. Since it's not hazardous material, you're not having to backwash it. What happens? Which, again, was later on explained. But I think that would be a selling point for you.
Kind of adding on to what these two gentlemen were saying, I think demonstrations and events would be huge, just because I kind of come from that background. We do a lot of events, things like that, and we kind of get a lot of customers on board with what we've got going on, and I really think that that would be a big, big thing for you guys. So more events, demonstrations, just kind of showing these guys what you can do, I think would be a big thing as well. So just kind of adding on to what they were saying.
The audience is waking up.
All right, so Greg, you know,
Stand up if you would, please.
I believe strongly in divide and conquer, and you got to find the places where you can create other revenue streams. I think you're thinking just like maybe a couple of avenues for a revenue stream, which is the leasing part. But if you can change, you know, in the field, it's $1.50 to $3 for disposal per barrel, and if you could change that and you capture the water as a revenue stream, let's say you recover it, you cycle, like Charles had mentioned, if you go over there and you recover water, the oil, you can sell that. Or you could recover water and you can sell that. Or you could recover the minerals and sell that. Those are revenue streams that can be attained if you think about other ways to do it. Yeah?
So you got multiple streams of income within one stream.
I'm gonna piggyback on Van. We do a lot of work with the Garland Chamber and the Dallas County Manufacturers Association. You could take one of these and park it at a place like Kraft, Paxi Pack, Plastic Pack, and recycle their stored water, and then go to another place, park there, recycle their stored water, park somewhere, and go to all these facilities without having to leave the city limits. And you could have a couple of these working full time in the manufacturing center alone, because they use so much, 400,000 gallons a month of water per manufacturing facility. So one of my clients did one in Austin because that's what they were going through per month, and that was I can't really say, but they so that's where I was thinking this could really be a boon to manufacturing, especially since it's so portable and they store so much of their water. These giant tanks, you could just sit there and go, let's clean that out. Let's clean that out. Swap it, and then they can take all that water and reuse it in their manufacturing process. Metal finishing, etching, zinc, you name it. So I would really look into manufacturing, not just oil and gas.
I volunteer my pond for a demonstration on how well you can clean, because it's really a snake filter too. It's really dirty. Okay, 2 minutes on anything you heard that you want to say.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to do is we brought our demo unit here today, so let's go ahead and open up the door back there.
We'll do that after we close, since we're at the end now,
okay,
if that's
good.
okay.
Well, we can do that. I heard a lot of good things here today. John, I really appreciate what you said. As a matter of fact, working with SMU, our goal is to work with them on a grant, and Dr. Biscock is working with us to create a grant. There are several National Science Foundation grants I think that would apply. We're hoping to do some type of a grant that would then allow us to be funded as well as SMU gets funding, and we would work together, and it continues to grow. So we're already moving that direction. Again, it's just a matter of manpower and having enough people to do the things necessary to do that. I also think that as far as some of the other things that were said, one of the things when we talk about number of barrels per day or number of gallons per day or so on, what makes this company potentially incredibly lucrative is when we have high volumes. So one of our lineups of our standard machines,
just gonna use the
if you want to put it that way, would do 8,000 to 10,000 barrels a day, which translates into about 420,000 gallons of water. So we could have a much smaller machine that could handle, 400,000 gallons in a month. So, but it's not as lucrative typically. It's the volume that makes it so lucrative, because you're working on, 50 cents, $1, $1.50 a barrel, and that starts to add up when you're dealing with 20, 30, 40, 50, 80,000 barrels per day. That's really where we get the most. But I also agree, and I think it makes sense to look for streams of income that can help us get started. One of the things about demos is this, demonstrations. Demonstrations can be very effective. We've done lots and lots of demonstrations. Here's the thing about demonstrations. I kind of decided is we were doing the Texas two-step, but we were leading with the wrong foot. what I like to say. Because we would go in and say, hey, you want to see a demo? And the companies would get all pumped up about seeing a demo. Like, yeah, that's great, that's great. But they're not thinking sale. They're not thinking market. They're thinking experimental. They're thinking, oh, kind of cool, yeah. So when are you guys going to be ready to do something? So now we're really at the point where we can do that. So what we're trying to do is we're looking for RFPs is the way they do it in the oil industry, request for proposals, present proposals, and with that say, hey, we can do a demo for you. We can come in and do a demo. Doing demonstrations can lead to other things, but it can also be very time consuming and take a lot of time, and then you don't get a sale. So it depends on what they're coming there for. So we want to go in and say, hey, we want to contract with you, we want to give you a proposal, and then when they say, yeah, let's do a proposal, then we say, hey, we can do a demo for you. So what we found is that, and I traveled across North Dakota for 2 weeks straight doing nothing but demos, and people are impressed and people are interested, people are excited. They say, well, when you get that big machine, come back and see me. So it's sort of a catch-22. I agree with you that demos can be very effective at getting sort of the word out. But at the same time, we have to be careful about how we do it because we have such limited resources. So we can't just go out and park somewhere and have someone there all day long and all night long working. We don't have full-time people. So, but I like the idea of going out and doing demonstrations for people who are interested in having us do a contract with them. That really appeals to me.
Well, everybody give Greg a big round of applause. Great presentation. So we're bringing this one to a close. Thanks for coming. I don't have the date for the next one yet, but should have that out pretty quickly. We're about to open the back door. Greg will be in the back and give you a tour of the device. Michael's pouring wine. We got snacks, cake, all that. Meet everybody, make some contacts, and thank you for coming. Have a nice night.